Hello everyone, thanks for coming along to our session. I can see people still coming and rolling in and finding a seat. There's a few scattered around up the front, so don't be shy. Wonderful. So thanks so much for joining our session. I'm Camille Alvarez, I'm the Professional Services Manager here at Schoolbox. I am joined by Daniel, who is one of our education consultants. He will also be co-presenting with me today. And we are also really fortunate to have a school voice and a school story here. We have David leading, who will be jumping up and sharing his reporting journey with us as well a little bit later. First of all, I just wanted to touch on the fact that I think I could see a lot of people in the continuous reporting session previously who have sort of bunking in and are sticking around for this one as well. Hands up if you were in the continuous reporting session previously. Wonderful, that's great. I'm a big fan of using those two systems together, the summative and the continuous reporting approach, and then also your summative reporting. I think they work beautifully together. So we'll touch on that and how they can, provide different things and different pieces of information to your parents as well. So in this session, we're going to be talking about really moving from a bit of a retrospective approach to building your reports to a proactive one. So our objectives are to reframe the reporting design process, to explore the Schoolbox features that bring clarity and consistency and can support the build out of your reports, and to reflect on opportunities to align reports with your vision. Before I do dive in, last Meetup I also presented a session on summative reporting, and I don't know whether any of you might have been here for that. But we were starting to talk at that point about using things like school-wide reporting courses to support the development of your summative reports. And in the past 12 months or so, we've had a lot of engagement with schools around that. And so we've sort of built out that concept a lot more. So I'm pretty excited to share some of the things that we're doing and how we're working with schools at the moment to sort of deliver their summative reporting. So just a little bit of thinking about the past here. Traditionally, reports have focused on surfacing summative results. So you can see the illustration on the left there. Thinking about, you're using your courses and your units and you're capturing summative assessment tasks and formative assessment tasks and all the things. And then a lot of the summative reporting that was produced in Schoolbox would just pick up that data that was attached with particular work types, like summative assessment, and pull that through to the reports. So with a lot of product sort of adjustments and uplift over the past period of time, our reports are starting to look quite different. And we are seeing a shift with our schools. We're seeing a bit of a change in what schools are wanting to be able to present to the community. And schools seem to be moving more towards more holistic reports, the whole student picture. Also, wanting to drive consistency and clarity, that's always a really high priority. And some of these structures that we've been putting in place and recommending to schools really helps to drive that consistency and gives you the reassurance as a school that what's happening across your year levels and across those subjects is quite consistent. We also acknowledge that there have been a lot of reports generated in other systems as well. And in the past, I think a bit of a blocker to using the Schoolbox summative reporting feature was the distribution method. And that sort of piece of the puzzle has been resolved now that you can actually share your reports within the student profile in Schoolbox, so keeping everything all together. So some of the other trends that we're seeing, schools are keen to reduce the double handling of data. So that way, if you're putting things into Schoolbox, you can surface that data from Schoolbox. We also have some tools that assist you if you do need to bring some data in, like attendance data, for example. We've got some tools now that allow you to do that a lot more seamlessly. As I mentioned before, the whole student picture is sort of what we're seeing schools are wanting to be able to incorporate into their reports. So learning behaviours and dispositions are starting to become a lot more prevalent. So we have schools leveraging rubrics and rolling those out across the whole school and then being able to surface those visually in the reports. In addition to that, tutor group comments, pastoral comments, that's another piece that we tend to be weaving into the structures that we're supporting schools to build with their reporting courses. As I mentioned, attendance data can be brought into. And these are just some of the things that we're finding schools, they're sort of must-haves for their reports. So we are recommending building semester-based courses that are specifically for reporting. So thinking about the session prior about continuous reporting, since we do have so many people in the room who were in that session, that conversation was so wonderful, and talking about all of the different things you can do with continuous reporting and how frequently you can give that really tangible feedback to students. So then using a reporting course allows you to sort of isolate the tasks and the data capture for what you want to roll out in your formal summative reports. So just keep that bit in mind as we move forward. So I'd love to throw out a question here to the audience and give you a moment to have a little bit of a discussion at your tables. So thinking about your current reporting model and what you want to do as a school, recognise also thinking about the idea of continuous reporting as well. So what does that broad vision look like? Where is it aligned with, with your goals at the moment, your current reporting model? Is it stuck in tradition? And is it doing what it needs to do for you? So I'll give you a moment to have a chat. Thanks, everyone. I always hate being the person that has to cut off all the wonderful conversations. I hope your table discussions have been able to put a few things front of mind for you to sort of think about and ponder as we move forward through the session. Okay, so I want to talk now about some of the recommendations that we are providing to schools and how we've been working with schools, sort of, based on what I was describing before with that reporting course concept. So what we have been doing with our schools is recommending a sort of vision to structure approach. So really working backwards. So starting with your end goal in mind for your summative report and thinking about everything that you need to be able to communicate in that summative report. And then we work backwards and build those elements as specific activities or due work items in a reporting course. So keeping the naming conventions very sort of generic and broad, this structured course can service the needs of your summative reports, and it makes it a very efficient way to be able to roll things out across the school because it's one course or maybe a couple of courses for different campuses or different areas of the school, and you can roll them out across all of your classes and have that sort of consistency and feel secure in that consistency. So starting with the end in mind, we do look at these course structures, and using consistent work types and rubrics and templates can really help to sort of bring this together. So essentially, you're letting the desired output shape the data input. So if we have a look at this illustration up here, or this example up here, you can see we have a junior school course, and then we have a senior school course. And then we also have various units in there too. So that would allow you to take the relevant units for the reporting courses and push those out where they need to go across your year levels. And inside each of these units, you can include various due work items to capture the information that you need. So digging in a little bit deeper, this is having a look now at the due work items specifically sitting in this English Semester 1 reports space. So here we have a due work item that would allow a unit result to be populated in. There's also a due work item for a learner profile rubric. So that could be a school-wide rubric. This is the sort of thing that we're starting to see schools are doing more commonly. It's providing, these sort of learner dispositions or learner profiles and grading them across rubrics that are consistent school-wide and then incorporating those into the reports. Also allowing space there for student reflection and teacher comment. So setting up that structure, it's not mixed up with all of the other course material in the other, in the other course builder component. It's isolated in its own specific reporting course. So that way you can keep your strategy around continuous reporting sitting in the other material in the teaching and learning space, and then your reporting course can sit really separately. It allows you to deploy the course at a time that's relevant, in keeping with your rollout schedule for your summative reports, and you can, PD with your teachers ahead of time and sort of get that moving. And some of the other due work items that we don't actually have up here at the moment, which schools have been leveraging, are things like attendance percentage as well. So setting up a due work item that is titled attendance percentage, and then leveraging one of the new bulk import tools in the back end of Schoolbox to import in a CSV of attendance data allows you to pull that through to your reports as well. So I go back to my previous point of thinking about the end goal and then designing backward to think about the data input that's required. I'll hand over to Daniel now to talk about some of our new tools. Thanks, guys.
All right, so as Cam mentioned in her broad overview of functionality, a lot more schools are using summative reporting within Schoolbox, the main reason being that the migration of data from one system to another and the human error that can happen when you're migrating that data, either teachers doing it, can be a pain point for staff, but can also be prone to errors. So having your LMS data within the LMS in Schoolbox and having that surface in a summative report reduces the workload for teachers significantly in terms of that data handling, and also can lead to consistency. So we're going to have a quick look at some new functionality to help, that has really been built out to help that process of summative reporting and capturing that data accurately. Cam mentioned the importing of bulk feedback, and that can be feedback in all sorts of ways. It might be, as Cam mentioned, attendance data, and it might be a numerical value of the percentage attendance of a student. The normalised value of anything can be pulled into a due work item, and then the due work item can determine how that surfaces, either as a numerical value, as a number. It could be a letter grade, depending on what kind of data you're trying to surface. But it doesn't have to be a numerical value like attendance. It could be, I worked with a school just recently and they wanted to migrate a lot of data that they had in Clipboard and student participation, all the clubs and sporting things that the student has been involved in, and had all of this data in Clipboard, and they wanted to surface that somehow within summative reports. And so the new bulk import feature allows them to do that. It actually also respects HTML tags if you're a bit more technical. So you can do things like line breaks, for example, and create lists. And so it's quite a powerful feature. We'll mention it again when we talk a little bit about Victorian progression points as well, which you can now visualize, where you perhaps want to import data that happened in a previous semester and you want to backdate it, so that was created at a very particular time. Let's imagine maybe last semester or the last academic period that you had. You also have the function of backdating things within that import, as if that feedback was given in a very specific academic period. Particularly that's useful when you're migrating data from a different system, for whatever reason. So that is quite a powerful tool, and it has lots of use cases. And we can discuss that later on as we look at different functionality. There are some other features as well. Sometimes for compliance purposes and lots of other purposes, you need a certain format, and there's a lot more flexibility about how you format certain things in summative reports. Another one is displaying the student numbers in footers, which is often a legal requirement or a compliance requirement. The cohort comparison chart has basically surfaced everything on a class page that had some kind of numerical value that you ticked as wanting to surface on summative reports. And sometimes it wasn't appropriate. Attendance data might be one of those things where you don't want to surface the cohort averages for attendance. Or it might be that a certain task that you have set, which might be a satisfactory, non-satisfactory value, where the visualization doesn't make any sense. Most people in the class had a satisfactory completion, and you don't need a box and whisker plot to say that everyone was there. It's a meaningless value. So now you can select which particular due work items surface in that box and whisker plot, whereas previously you couldn't do that, which might be useful. As I mentioned also, Victorian progression points, which some schools are mandated to use and some schools would like to show progression. You can leverage the use of the curriculum codes or curriculum nodes that we have, and that curriculum can then track progression within certain learning areas, and you can then surface them as progression points as required by a number of jurisdictions. It does take a little bit of structural realignment within your instance. It's not something that you can just sort of turn on and visualise. The system needs to know what you're trying to track longitudinally, and then it can surface that data, which might be something you might be interested in. And finally, surfacing reports on student profiles and via the pastoral module. One of the issues that we've identified early on is it's great that you can produce these reports and you can output a PDF. Great, fantastic. And how do we distribute that now to parents? And that was always a bit of a pain point. So to mitigate that, there is now a way of importing things via our pastoral care module where you can surface the current report and you can also surface all the past reports as well, where parents from the profile page can very easily identify the space where you have these reports, and they can then go back and have a look at last semester's report, compare it to current semester's report, and makes that distribution pain point a little bit easier. So enough from us. Now for the main event. I've worked with David, was it this year or toward the end of last year? This year. Last year, on summative reporting. And I didn't have to do very much because David was an absolute whiz and a master, and very carefully and methodically created both a process and then an incredible final product. It was an absolute pleasure to work with him and made my job incredibly easy. So we thought that he would be the perfect person to walk you through the process of what he did to create these reports. And he's just been an absolute legend. So please come up on stage. Would you like to use the lectern or the handheld?
I'll try the handheld.
All right, perfect. You can either use this if you like, or just click next. Just the arrow on the right-hand side would be the best.
I found it really difficult to encapsulate what was 6 to 8 weeks of intense work into a 15-minute presentation. I understand these slides will be available to you, and when you get those, you'll see copious notes that I've put there because I'm going to forget to say a lot of things. But here we go. So a little bit about me. I'm not a teacher, so I didn't speak into the topic of what should go on a report. I'll leave that for the educators in our team. I have a role that is exclusively Schoolbox, and I understand that we're pretty privileged to have someone who can devote all their time to that. So I'm there to facilitate. I describe my role as being Schoolbox town planner, architect, builder, personal trainer, and sometimes paramedic. I'm by trade a systems developer and a web developer, so I have a particular spin on how I approach Schoolbox, possibly to the annoyance of people at Schoolbox. My focus is on user experience more than anything else. But I've been working in schools for 15 years and 8 with Schoolbox, so I've been in this reporting space for a very long time. This presentation is about what we did. I don't think for a second this should be the perfect blueprint for you all to follow. It's just what we did, our experiences, and it's my hope that this will inform you to some degree. So, what prompted us to change? We'd had summative reports pumping out of Synergetic for years, so why change? Well, it turns out it was a problem with our plumbing. Now, if you're using Schoolbox as best as possible, and you're doing summative reporting from Synergetic, but there's no data connection, it's double entry. You've heard that all before, you've probably experienced that yourself. And the problem with data entry is, stating the obvious, it's a huge burden for teachers. It's error prone, and in my experience, when you expect teachers to put things into 2 places, and the summative report is seen as the holy grail, Schoolbox gets neglected. And at a previous school when I arrived, Schoolbox was almost optional because they did not have this plumbing in place. Fortunately, our principal, when she realised that there was this double entry happening, insisted we get the plumbing right. At my current school, it was already set up by the time I arrived. And it's pretty easy to set up once you know what you're doing. Again, very quickly, plumbing easy to set up, but there's a problem. There's only one place in Synergetic that Schoolbox can write its data to. That's called the markbook area. That's great, easy to do, but to get reports from that data, you need to wire that or pipe that into the assessments area. There's a piece of work in the middle there that you need a really good plumber to do, which might be every year, every semester. In our case, it's kind of an ongoing task. And it's really a case of neither system is to blame for this, it's just they were developed independently. Schoolbox came along, wanted to help by plumping data into Synergetic, but there was only that one place. A square peg, round hole situation. It was a lot of work for the plumber, and our plumber was frequently in tears over this. It wasn't just getting the plumbing right, and that's error-prone in itself. It's easy to make a mistake. I've done that myself. It's following up with the teachers who change things after the plumbing's in place. There's a whole area there. You may have experienced that yourself. And what I've found in the schools I've worked at is that summative reporting ends up driving how we use Schoolbox, which isn't perhaps the best. So you need a really great plumber for that to work, and we had a great plumber. The last time I saw our plumber, she was going away on an overseas tour as an assistant. While she was away, I noticed her desk was empty, completely cleared, and she never came back. So we're in a tight spot. The person who replaced her had never used Synergetic before, had never used Schoolbox before, and the poor woman was stressed trying to figure out how to make it work. I had knowledge in that area, though Synergetic's not my area of expertise. I've got a colleague who's a web developer who knew a little bit, and between the three of us, we kind of got there. But the plumbing leaked, we had problems along the way. We discovered issues that had not been revealed before because all that knowledge walked out in one head. And we were trying to piece things together. To make matters worse, I discovered that we were reporting through two different reporting engines. There was the Synergetic one, through Crystal Reports. Then there was a custom one that someone years ago had built, and they were theoretically the same report. When you look at them closely, they were different. And different people were looking at different reports, and that just added to the mess. We got through that semester. This was semester 1 last year. We got through there with a lot of stress. But then we got parent complaints. Parents noticed things that weren't quite right, and we discovered things had fallen through the cracks. So that created a lot of drama, and our leadership wanted change. They wanted it immediately. So what to do? We could have engaged a new Synergetic expert and then worked with that person, but it would have still been that same piece of work in the middle in Synergetic every semester, every other day, to try and keep the connection alive there. And there are all those issues that we get between consistency between Synergetic and Schoolbox. I don't know if you've experienced this, but in both schools I found that because the summative report in Synergetic was seen as the Holy Grail, any correction to the report was done in Synergetic, and Schoolbox was often neglected. So we have this inconsistency. So a parent comes into Schoolbox and they see that their daughter has got C+ there, but it's a B on the report. What's gone wrong? And that's not a good look. Our reports hadn't been reviewed in a very long time, I think 10 or more years. There'd been hardly any change, just tweaks now and then. But then I've been working in this space a long time, and I said, what if we kept the plumbing within Schoolbox? We didn't try to pump it to Synergetic. That was very much welcomed by our school. But the next question was, who's going to do the work? Now, my web developer friend is fully capable of writing a report directly to the Schoolbox data. Back in 2010, I wrote a continuous reporting system for another school, and the output of that was a summative report, so I knew I had the skills to do that. So between the two of us, we could have done that. But I was also aware that the summative reports were coming along and developing at a very fast pace. So while we could have had 100% control of the reports, if we'd done it ourselves, we felt it was better to go with the Schoolbox reports, even though they were still evolving. And again, I'm not a fan of reinventing the wheel. So our contact at Schoolbox said, we've got a guy called Dan, he can help you, guide you through this process, and that was the game changer for us. Okay, the next step was getting approval from a lot of the key players. And some of these problem blockers came up even after we'd committed to going down this path. One thing I've come across at both schools is synergetic is the source of all truth. And there's kind of this notion that everything must be in synergetic no matter what. I have a dear friend at a past school who believes that results needed to be in a data entry screen where she could see them for them to be true. So there's this kind of notion came up again. Then there was the perennial, but we've always done it this way, why change? Not so much a blocker, but a genuine concern was, how much more work is this going to be for my team? They're already busy. And then a quirky one. I had one teacher, maybe two heads of department, come to me and say, but I like synergetic because I can see a whole cohort in one great big screen. And that's where I do my proofreading. So these questions and many more came up along the way. Okay, this is going to be a little bit controversial. Speaking as a systems developer, I kind of think it's a big ask to have one system be the source of all truth, particularly in a complex and evolving space like education. And I conveyed that to leadership and said, we've perhaps got to stop thinking of synergetic is everything to synergetic integrated with Schoolbox is our source of truth together. I was aware that a lot of these questions came from a place of fear of change, and so I tried to handle it gently and empathetically as best I could. That we've always done it that way came up a few times, and I felt a bit like Dr. Phil, like, well, how's that working for you? It wasn't. A lot of the heads of department weren't aware how much work was done in the back rooms by administrators to make reporting work for them. They were also unaware that a lot of their staff didn't like synergetic at all. I'm sorry if there's anyone who loves synergetic here. As for the less work, I explained to the staff that it was doing the same job, just in a different place, and perhaps in an easier way. And as for those who love the proofing, it turns out they weren't aware of a thing called the Core Smart Book, and those other great tools that are in Schoolbox. We started down the path, started working with Dan, and things were going great, in my opinion. But we did have a few on the team who had issues. They said the Schoolbox reports don't look professional, and the default report isn't exactly bells and whistles. That's okay. There was complaints about no student name on the report, which wasn't available at that time. That was a big deal breaker for at least one person. We didn't have a logo on every page like the old reports. At that point, we couldn't put subject descriptions on our reports. Then there's this other quirky thing. If you do a rollover, we've discovered that takes out, and I'm talking about class page rollovers, that takes out the teacher name and the photo. That was a problem for us because we print our draft copies of the report, or generate our draft copies, do this timetable change, which forces a rollover, and then do the final copy. So we lost a few things. So once, in an early meeting with Dan made a comment about how we could style the reports with CSS. For those of you to whom I'm suddenly speaking technobabble, CSS is a language used to style websites and to structure them. That was happy days because I've spent a lot of time in that space. So I was confident I could do something with that. So that got rid of the reports don't look professional thing. We decided we could live without the footer with the student name on it. And when I spoke to the person who was really concerned about that, she was planning to print hard copies of all the reports, and what if she dropped them on the floor? How would she know which page belonged to which student? Well, it suggested we go down the path of PDFs, proofread the PDFs, and that alleviated that problem. The next one is an example of how I was really well supported by a head of teaching and learning at this time. We had someone there who wanted this change and stood by me and said, we don't need a logo on every page, we've got it on the front page, that will do. Subject description, which is now available by the way, Dan gave us a really clever way to get around that, and it worked beautifully. And again, leadership said, we don't need teachers' names on every report, we'll have other ways of getting around that. Though I may be putting in a request to Schoolbox to consider that at some stage. We then got to the point of, we'd quashed most of the resistance, it was time to go, ready to renovate, and we had a timeline. A very short timeline. So we started by looking at the existing report. We decided, let's not try and rebuild our reporting completely, let's just mimic what we've got in Synergetic. So I did an analysis of what we had in those old reports. And we had all the summative assessments in Schoolbox already, so that was great. But there were a number of items that you can see there that weren't in Schoolbox at all. To complicate things further, most year levels had some quirkiness that required something slightly different. And then Year 10 Science did a thing called rotations, which is courses within courses, and demanded some special attention. But having understood what needed to go into Schoolbox, I set up a list of things I needed to create. We needed some new work types. We had a lot of great work types, but we needed some new ones, and Dan was fantastic in helping us find a naming convention to make it very clear what we should have there. We needed some new assessment definitions for the items that weren't in Schoolbox. We agonised over whether to do the reporting course, as Camille showed before, or whether to add reporting units to each course. Pros and cons for each. I love the approach of a single reporting course. But knowing the people I work with, I knew that would be challenging. I've had challenges in that area before. So we decided that we'd go with a reporting unit in each course. I did build some reporting courses for tutor groups and instrumental music, made some new class pages. So I knew exactly where I was going with what I needed to construct, or what we needed to construct. Then there was the issue of who was going to do the work. Do I train everyone in the course, in the school to do their course building, or do I do it myself? In a perfect world, I would have spent weeks training the staff, let them do the building work, and then I would audit what they would do. At this point, we had literally 3 weeks before reports were due, and I just made the call, I need to do this myself. It kind of helps to have OCD in situations like this. It did mean a lot of hard work over those 3 weeks, a lot of long weeks, a lot of long days. So I've built many, many courses, so I knew what I was doing. I just jumped in, did the work. Wherever possible, I'd use something like a rubric to upload into those assessments. I tried to take a very methodical approach to this, so nothing got missed out. I did a few imports to help teachers along, did all the course modifications, course import modifications for them. Then I asked teachers to audit my work. I gave them some step-by-step how to check that I'd done the right thing for them. And this was inadvertently very cunning because it trained them in the process of what we were doing. It was reverse, PD in a reverse kind of way. Just by the way, my methodical approach was to use these. I have set up a department page for every department which is the one-stop shop for the head of department, gives them all their courses and classes in one spot. So this was my work plan. I would just go through course by course, class by class, to get through all the work I had to do. The unit planner was my best friend. It's a great place to do all this work. And this is an example of how I had to make a variation for year 11. In year 11, we don't have achievement standards, but we do report on satisfactory completion of VCE outcomes. Very simple to do with this approach, and would have been a nightmare to try and replicate this in Synergetic, I think. Then came planning for the interior decorating. So this is the HTML CSS piece. My strategy here was to investigate, study what was in the report previews, trial my ideas for formatting in the staging instance, and try not to break anything. And I'd frequently test what was going on in the instance in other areas to make sure that my new CSS hadn't broken anything. This does get a little bit more technical, so I'll go over it very briefly. Now, if you speak CSS and HTML, it became a simple matter of previewing the report, right-clicking on the piece you wanted to style, clicking Inspect, studying the HTML structures, all the classes and things, identifying a unique class set, sorry if I'm speaking technobabble, and then writing the CSS for it. And making sure I don't break anything. Throughout this process of building all these courses and doing the CSS, I kept up communication with my teachers to the point of being annoying. I let them know what was happening, what was coming, what to expect, what I expected of them. I sent samples to leadership to make sure they were happy with how it was going. We tested lots of things long before we got to the draft run. Then towards the end, I did some DIY workshops with staff so that they would learn how they would use the new assessments. These were reasonably well attended, but I was concerned at first that they weren't fully attended until I discovered that people had worked it out for themselves. It was that easy. Drum roll, the big reveal. One thing our old reports didn't have was a cover page or explanatory notes. Now, the Summative report makes this really easy to do and to tweak and to change as required. We felt that this gave us a chance to clean up the typography of the reports. You'll notice on the left-hand side there, that's the old report. There's some bars there. That's actually a rubric. It was presented for 10, 15 years as a bar chart. So we've gone straight to a more traditional, clear rubric. This is a sample of a subject report. Again, the rubrics look a lot clearer. One little thing we were kind of forced to do was go from using letter grades for every assessment to percentages, as you can see on the right. This was one of those, but we've always done it that way, kind of issues. For some reason, it was felt we should hide the percentage for every assessment item on the semester report, even though they were sitting there in Schoolbox for students and parents to see. So again, leadership was very strong on this and said, no, we're going with percentages. We don't have a valid reason that we can think of at the moment for hiding them. And we didn't have the dual marking thing available to us at that time that's now available in Schoolbox. Maybe we would have used that, but I think most people are happy with this. We've added a summary of assessment on the left there to our reports. This has been a huge hit. One parent said to me, that's all I need. I've had continuous reporting all year, that's enough. Then again, her daughter was a straight A student. I've had several teachers quietly say to me, David, if we are reporting continuously all year and doing that well, that summary is all I need. Music over here looks very much like our other subjects. This is private instrumental music lessons. This is one of those things that got leaked in the debacle of semester 1, 2024. We published reports not realising that music had been forgotten. So, how was it received? Teachers love that they can go into one place and do everything there, not jump between two different systems and then keep them aligned. Most of us felt there was less work, aside from my having a nervous breakdown trying to get it across the line. Most people found it less work. Report generation is fast. I can get out 300 reports in maybe an hour or so. Whereas with Synergetic, the previous semester, I'd spend a day pumping them out bit by bit. Parents love the new look and they really love that new summary of attainment. And oddly enough, people thought the reports looked pretty professional. So what made this possible? Thank you, Dan, for all your assistance. A lot of this work was a once-off effort and we recognised that going in. We wouldn't need to do this every year. Once we get it in place, we'd be fine. And this semester 1 this year was minimal effort. I spent my time just auditing mark books rather than working in Synergetic, talking to people, chasing up misalignments and things like that. We just did the audits and pressed a button and they came out beautifully. Another thing that made this work was I was supported from the top, which was really helpful, especially when that middle layer was a bit suspicious. And I think clear communication is absolutely essential in this. So, we are now in a situation where summative reporting is a direct output of all the work we do in continuous reporting. Summative reporting no longer drives how we use Schoolbox or how we report there. We're not using a bulk upload into pastoral care. That wasn't available at the time from memory, but that's okay. My buddy, the web developer, already had a tool in place to bulk upload documents into DocMan and Synergetic. So I would take the output from Schoolbox, from the reporting, drag that into his system, and it'd be in Synergetic within a minute or two. So we're fortunate in that regard. And students and parents access the reports from the academic reports page in Schoolbox. So we no longer have the data misalignment between Synergetic and Schoolbox, and we have no more tears. We've already made some minor adjustments. We've got more ahead. We have a new deputy principal who's come in and making us think, what should reporting look like, which is fantastic. So we may lose some of those rubrics or may gain new ones. We find this summative reporting incredibly flexible. Just one quick example. The head of maths came to me a couple of weeks ago and said, David, we've got this rubric we use in maths from years 7 to 10. We use it all the time, but it never gets on reports. We don't know how to get it on the reports. Can we please have it? It was a matter of creating, in each course, a simple assessment item with a rubric attached. It was 5 minutes of my time to advise her and probably half an hour of her time to build it. And now we have a brand new piece in that reporting area. Junior school's going to follow soon, but we've got some other work to do in junior school first. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, David. That was wonderful. I hope that's given you a little bit of inspiration around what's possible. And I do wonder whether some of the problems, the plumbing problems that David's described, resonate as well as maybe drivers for some change there. So on the back of that presentation from David, I'd love to give you all a bit of space, a bit of moment to have a bit of a think about what you've heard and how that could influence your own approach. So a couple of little prompts up there. I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a chat at the tables. Thank you, everyone. We might just move on quickly. Got a couple more things to show you. This is more specifically around the Victorian progression reporting that we can now do inside Schoolbox. So just a couple more points to talk to, and then I'd love to just preserve a little bit of time at the end to bring David and also Dan up to the stage here so that you can ask some questions if you have them. So the Victorian progression reporting. Just for me to have a bit of a read of the room, can you please raise your hand if this is something that you at your school are producing? Do you need to use progression reporting at your school? A couple, okay. So I'll go through this relatively quickly. Basically, the Department of Education, Victoria, it requires this progression reporting graph to be produced for reporting purposes. This hasn't been able to be produced in Schoolbox historically, but with some work that we've done over the past sort of 18 months, you can now do this within the system. It sits all in the same functionality space, so it is still leveraging the template builder within your instance. So if you're familiar with that space, you can build out any number of report templates to service different areas of your school. So you may have a report that's dedicated to Victorian progression reporting, and then a completely different sort of report for another area of the school. That's absolutely a possibility. So there are a few different aspects that would need to be configured for you to be able to produce this and pull this through properly. There is a course structure, much like what I described earlier, the reporting course that you can build as a sort of centralised course and then push that out across all of your classes. It's a similar case for the Victorian progression reporting. There's a few sort of key data points that you need to be able to capture in order to feed the data through to produce a visualisation like I had on the screen before. One of the key features that has been uplifted in order to facilitate that data input is the bulk feedback input, and Daniel spoke to this earlier. What this allows you to do is that if you want to kick off your progression reporting within Schoolbox, you obviously need that data point, that historical data point from which to map the progress. So if you are doing this for the first time, leveraging this bulk feedback importer allows you to, in the back end of Schoolbox, bring in all those historical dates, historical grades, and date them back to the academic period when they were shared. And that gives you your starting point. With some clever sort of configuration from there, we're able to then map the next data entry piece. So, in saying that, there are a few specific sort of structures that you would need inside your reporting course to feed through and surface that visualisation. So please reach out if you are wanting to do that, because we can absolutely help you and support you to build that out and generate those reports. That goes for all of your broader report requirements as well. As you've heard from David, Daniel worked really closely with David to support and facilitate that rollout of the reports and all of the consulting pieces that sits behind it as you as a school make a decision as to what you would like your end result to be. So that was very brief. I would now like to give a little space for some Q&A. So can I ask David and also Daniel to pop up to the stage? Does anyone in the audience have a question that you would like to ask? Saeed, how are you?
Thanks. Is Schoolbox investigating reporting for the RTO VET system? Like certificates, version numbering, and that kind of thing?
Sorry, I forgot to use the microphone. Tried to use my teacher voice. Is Schoolbox looking into the RTO VET versioning system with reporting and certificates and those kind of things as part of Summative?
I need a little bit more detail there. Can you talk to that?
I'm not sure about the specifics of the requirements, but there are a number of schools that have those vocational courses that do have to report on in a very specific way, and they do use it. In terms of the very specific requirements, do you want to elaborate a bit on the specific requirements that you have?
With the RTO, you need to, when you reissue a document, you have to have another version number produced. When you do transcripts, you have to have them laid out and a certificate with certain images on it in a certain way. They're very pedantic in how their reports are produced, and some SMSs have pre-done templates that match the requirements of ASQA, and you just literally click ASQA template for certificate, ASQA template for transcript, and it just preloads it into your summative reporting and just pulls it through and formats it correctly.
Yeah.
Not that I'm expecting you guys to go that far, that's pretty full on, but just accommodating that niche kind of, that, as you said, a lot of users are running the higher ed certificate system in Schoolbox. Thank you for the, sorry to rant on.
Yeah, no, I think that clears it up a little bit. I think there might be scope. There's a lot of things that you can customise with reports, what you show, what you don't show. So perhaps we can maybe catch up afterwards if you show me an example of what it looks like and what you're trying to embed into those reports and what those structures are. The templates are, the version part of it doesn't seem that complicated. You can have multiple versions of the same report with different specifications. But in terms of what you're trying to surface in them, maybe we can catch up and have a conversation around it. But yeah, that's a good question.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so I think if there is a formalised, really structured template, we'd have to look at whether our templating functionality can support that. But basically, when we do work with schools around this, the first starting point is a lot of consulting around your area of need. So that would be, the opportunity to sort of break that down and see what your requirements are. And also your school engagement manager is well versed in all of this and can help to kind of decipher whether that's something that can translate into the Schoolbox summative reports as well. Do we have any other questions? Yes?
When we roll,
Changing over to Schoolbox for summary reporting, is there the ability to upload old reports so that our parent doesn't have to go to our SIS for one lot of PDFs and Schoolbox for the new PDFs?
Yes. So with the pastoral care space that you can now upload your summative reports to, it's a streamlined process if you're producing your reports in Schoolbox and doing a round reporting and then to be able to put them directly into the pastoral space, yes. But there's also functionality there for you to be able to import other documents as well, so to be able to bring them in. Yep. We did have another question down here, Anne-Marie. Thank you.
What other graphics are available? I see a box from Whisker there for cohort graphics. Other graphics available?
So the graphics, in terms of the report structure, there's different sections to the report. So with that first introductory area, which you would have seen in David's report, had a lot of school contextual information. There's a lot that you can produce in there. So we've worked with schools who have generated tables and breakdowns and explanations of the grading systems and so forth, and had visuals around those things. You could generate that in any other sort of system if you wanted to, and bring an image in. You can use tables, so you can format that introductory area quite a lot. You can do a lot there. In terms of how you visualise the grades in the sections that provide that summary overview, so the summary page that David showed, and then also drilling into the class level data, what you are going to be limited to there will be the box and whisker chart that you can see, and being able to configure that based on your work types, and then also the rubrics that you have in the system. So you can have single line grades, and then you can also be bringing in feedback in there if you would like, text-wise. But in terms of the graphics or visualizations, it's that box and whisker chart, and then also rubrics. Yep. Do we have any other questions? Okay, thank you. I might just move on to our last page here. So just some key reflections and some takeaways. So designing your reporting structures can really simplify your workflows and improve your accuracy. Using consistency helps you to make sure that the data that you're capturing is reliable. So having that centralised course, if you are using a centralised course, from a moderation point of view, you can now use the course markbook area, and you would be able to visualise across a cohort at what stage people are at with their data input as well. So there's that visualisation piece there that's going to help you from a moderation point of view and know when you maybe know who to sort of tap on the shoulder and say we need to get a move on, and also to tell you when you're ready to be able to push your reports out. We encourage you to treat your reporting as an evolving process, so reviewing it each semester. But as David's explained, it's essentially a one-time bigger effort to build those templates in, and then the reporting courses as well. Because once they're in the LMS, as you know, using the Schoolbox LMS, they stay in there year on year. So the next time the semester rolls around, you can give them a review, make sure they're still aligned, and then move forward from there. And finally, take the opportunity to consider your reports reflecting your school approach to teaching and learning. Consider the whole student, the whole student picture and what you do as a school from a values point of view or a learning dispositions point of view, and consider whether that's something that you would like to surface in your reports. Because quite often it's already happening in schools and it's embedded in the school culture. It's what students know, it's what they're familiar being assessed against. So it's just a way that you can, quite easily bring something that you're already putting into practice and surfacing that in your reports for a little bit more depth. Finally, love for the conversation to keep going. Out there we have the strategy studio. I don't know if anyone in here has taken the time or had the moment to go and have a chat over there to our consultants and our engagement managers. But if you are interested in exploring this sort of work that we've done a little bit more, there is a little flyer there that you can pick up that gives you a little bit of a breakdown of the structure of how we would work through things and support you. So please do feel free to visit that strategy studio and also ask some questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, David, for that presentation. It was brilliant. And I think it is lunchtime. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.